I unfortunately did not stream yesterday because I got home and I was really tired. I didn't even realize how tired I was. I like sat down on my bed. I opened Granblue Fantasy to do a full auto while I was like drinking water and trying to figure out how I wanted to set up my new equipment because I got like a new camera arm and stuff like that. And next thing I know, I'm waking up again. And it's like 5, and I'm like, oh, that kind of sucks. And I just had that happen 2 more times. I didn't really like fully wake up until I think 11:55 or something like that. But consequently, yesterday's stream or intended stream is going to get pushed to Tuesday, probably 3 or 4 p.m. CST. And instead, I'm going to talk about what's on screen here. So I guess to explain all the purple stuff, the other day I decided I wanted to build Magna Garurumon and to uh, try to figure out something sufficient. I did a decent bit of research. I watched some gameplay, so on and so forth, and I ended up reading a lot of discussion. And basically, what I got from the discussion is people still think that purple needs to be hit. Currently, they were talking about, or previously, they were talking about purple hybrid, but a lot of the discussion surrounding it was like they want purple hybrid to be hit, but they don't want it to die. Like the actual purple hybrid package seems to be something people are really enjoying, and the issue more so seems to be Jack Raid because it'll allow the extension of plays and comboing off and stuff like that, and it's what allows some of these builds to just OTK the opponent. So, I think this card probably should have gotten hit last year. I'm assuming it wasn't on the watch list because a lot of the builds that were being played at the time weren't really focused on using this. They were getting into all of their combos without really having to focus on this. So it's not that big of a deal. Um, but I also do think that like I've seen this card in Bilzamon, for example, and Bilzamon already has a lot of memory gain, and just being able to get more in a deck that naturally mills itself, kind of crazy, right? Like, I think all of these memory gain cards, these zero cost ones, should just be banned outright. But I feel like it's undeniable that Jack Raid has the most absurd use cases out of all of them. So it's just kind of weird to me that it wasn't touched before now. When it comes to Shoto and Honkanmon, I think both of these cards should be banned and reprinted uh, with like as new versions with different restrictions, like what One Piece does. Because Shoto giving anything blocker is proving to be a bit of an issue. Like I've seen a lot of people talk about Reaper because there's those Mother Reaper Mega Zoo decks, and I can definitely understand where they're coming from, but the thing that bothers me the most is Seven Great Demon Lords having access to Shoto because it ends up being this really strong control strategy. It has all these different ways to manipulate the opponent's board and clear out their bodies and stuff like that. So if you're not playing a deck that can really OTK or something like that, you can have a lot of difficulty whittling them down when you also have to eat through these really big blockers every turn. I think it would just be more healthy if that wasn't the case. I feel like Seven Great Demon Lords already kind of gatekeeps a bunch of stuff. You can play better into it, but just because of how it works inherently, it can be kind of rough. And I don't really appreciate the fact that Cosmo just makes it rougher. Because I'm also like, I'm not just thinking about this from a competitive standpoint. I'm thinking about this from like, how would it feel for people to have to deal with stuff like this in a local environment? I mean, even playing here on DCGO, some decks I was just testing to see how they function. I was looking at other people's builds, and I think there's like a lot of interesting things that don't really have an issue into Seven Great Demon Lords, but there's so many things that do that I'm like, I think it would be healthier if this interaction just wasn't something we had to engage with. Moving on to Honkunmon, I think this card definitely should have been restricted to aquatic and maybe sea animal because I see this card used in a lot of blue strategies, and it very frequently does lead to the person using it being able to make a second level 6 stack or presenting a defensive like level 4, level 5 for an ace, which might not seem like that big of a deal, but being able to expand your board really quickly like that can be a pretty big tempo shift that's a bit too much to deal with. And with Mirage specifically, regardless if you're doing like a good stuff Mirage deck or if you're doing the Galaxy box, I've seen instances where people would make 4 of these, and I think the only reason it doesn't happen more is because a lot of the Galaxy box decks aren't really heavily focusing on Mirage. They're not running like 4 copies of it, usually like 2. I mean, the same thing goes for this card, but the defense exists for the build because you can basically floodgate your opponent out of the game because the way up to effects work in Digimon is you always have to choose at least one unless there's no targets. So it's just really easy to trigger Mirage in the process of trying to play your turn, you know? Some people want Mirage gone, and at this point, yeah, it's fine. I still feel like Burst Mode is a really, really ridiculous card. I don't like the fact that, like, especially in Tribal, it can just keep going once it's established. But presumably, Tribal will need this card if Burst Mode, I mean, if the BT11 Mirage is hit. So I guess we just ignore it for now. But aside from that, talking about purple, the reason like, one of the reasons I put all these purple cards together is because during 2024, while I wasn't able to go to locals all that frequently, on the instances I did, I kept hearing conversations about purple, and so many of them people were arguing that purple was fine because it was very high skill ceiling, very high execution, so on and so forth. But my argument has consistently been the value that purple got from its filter package vastly outweighed what other decks can do. Like even with this Eismon being restricted to one, this is still a free body that you could potentially get. That would be a 13K. You had the capability to recycle it if you really wanted to get it out for free again. It's like BT7 for sure. It was kind of crazy. You're doing the Ogremon combos. You're trying to check two security. You don't really care if you get big or not because you do have like the on deletion inheritables and stuff to filter, but you trash this out of your hand, you get another big body that you can swing with the next turn. You have this swing into the opponent's security, trying to generate value. If it doesn't die, you're good. If it does die, you're extra good. I don't know, man. It's just so weird to me to see that like so many purple cards got restricted because of the absurd filter they have, and we still have really, really good filter even now. And the argument is made that, oh yeah, like no, purple decks were okay because they had high execution. I think that we should respect that these decks had high execution, that they took a lot to engineer in the first place to figure out these different combos and how to do the loops and whatnot. But I also think it's perfectly fair to acknowledge that, okay, you know what, maybe this is introducing a gameplay loop that is not really fun or engaging. Like I don't really think anybody enjoys having to deal with ruin mode loops, which the mummy loop deck does. It just so happens that it was slower, but like another thing we can look at right quick is this. Like I don't even remember whose build this is because I didn't make this, but it's really, really good at its job. It's not really hard to get to the point you want to be at. You even have the capability to prevent yourself from decking out thanks to Avenge Kidmon. Lament of Friendship adds any one Digimon card from your trash to the hand, and this is super relevant actually because previously you'd have to Digivolve into Junomon to recycle the Avenged Kidmon in your trash if you wanted to prevent yourself from decking out or if you wanted to stack your options in a certain order or whatever. And now you don't really need to do that because you go into Lilith, you could be completely decked out. You add this back, you play it for 3. She gives you 2 memory back, so effectively for memory cost of 1 you very likely can play this guy out for free, and then you get to choose the order that your option cards are going to be in. So you also can just have them sequenced appropriately for whatever it is that you're planning to do, right? Like you're going to digivolve further on this turn. If you're going to cycle again with Calling from the Darkness, you could do that. Maybe you're even going to end up using Lament an extra time to put everything back in your deck after you go through some kind of cycle. Like the ingenuity that goes into making this stuff is definitely something to be respected. But that doesn't mean, again, the resultant gameplay dynamic is wholly okay. After looking at that list, I'm not really sure if there's a whole lot else for me to say. Like, again, loops in the vein of what ruin mode does, I think, are a problem and hopefully will be addressed in some way, shape, or form because that actually does floodgate the opponent out of the game in a way that they can't even generate advantage. Like, at least in some of the other games I played, if something similar would have happened, you would still get on play, on enter, on summon effects, whatever term the game uses. But because of how lingering DP minus works in this game, at best you could try to use it to choke the opponent to 1 memory or something like that. Um, Consequently, it also prevents you from setting down a floodgate to prevent them from making their plays, which really sucks. Uh, so yeah, hope that gets addressed. Seven Great Demon Lords is already like a kind of strong deck. I believe in JP they are running the device cards as a form of removal, and then of course you have people running the Shoto stuff. So I guess we'll just have to see how this evolves. Maybe it won't be necessary for the Shoto restriction, but I think that could be cool. A random personal restriction I would like is restricting it with King Drasil, and this is just because sometimes if oh my god, like if you've ever played against five Digi-Egg seventh grade Demon Lord, you might know what I'm talking about. They get the top card King Drasil, and then they just end up having all these bodies that stick on the board because they don't have to worry about Gate using its effect to delete everything. They establish a Lithmon and a Creepymon, and you are in a rough spot, brother. It is not fun. I think again that's a interesting thought to have, right? Oh hey, what if I hit the 20%? But the gameplay loop of that deck just feels so toxic. And then the crazy thing is, I know that for a fact that there's stuff that can beat it. Like I've played into it with I think a lot of different decks. I've never had like an actual match against it because every time I played against it, it was on DCGO or I was playtesting with a friend using tabletop or something like that, and they were just like rotating decks. But whenever it happens, man, it's crazy. And the trade off of slowing you down also has a variable impact. Like if you just see a gate, because how much you're slowed down depends on where the King Drasil is. I kind of don't expect people to go for it, but it is something that can just straight up randomly win games. So, I would hope that maybe that would get noticed and addressed. Maybe it's just something that I should mention when I fill out the survey that they sent out to us in the TCG app recently. Yeah, I don't know. You guys tell me what you think. Are there any other cards that you're kind of concerned about that you think are a bit overtuned? Are there any builds out there that you think warrant discussing, or are there just any decks that you're interested in that you think would be cool to talk about and play with? I actually have way too many here, so I should be making some videos with some of them soon. But yeah, tell me your thoughts, and I'm gonna head off to work. See ya.